Hello creative friends, I'm Anastasia and welcome back to my channel. Today we are kicking off our living room makeover and finally starting to make it feel cozy and well designed. We're adding picture frame molding for an elegant, layered look that will be the most gorgeous base for the rest of our design. I'll also share my tips and lessons learned along the way. Let's go! Well, hello and welcome to my living room. This makeover is going to be such an exciting one because it is a blank space right now and it's just begging to be made over. So in this video, the main things we're going to do is paint the room in a beautiful color, as well as add some decorative picture frame molding around the room to give it character, texture, just some visual interest, and fill up these blank walls. We're already working with some great chair rail going around the room, so the picture frame molding is just gonna add in that little bit of extra that's gonna take it to the next level. I just feel that. So keep watching so you can see the huge transformation of our living room from being a blank box to being a space full of character and warmth. This is the first video in the living room makeover series, so make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss the full reveal video coming soon. I also have a couple of antique pieces of furniture that I got when my great-grandmother passed away. So they're pieces that are very special to me. This buffet here will be staying here. It's kind of acting as our media console and a huge source of storage. Although it is a little bit more red toned, mahogany toned than the rest of the furniture, I'm gonna find a way to make it work with the rest of the space. I also have this antique tiger oak piece that won't be staying in the living room. I think I'm actually going to put it in the laundry room if it works in there, but I have big plans to add a different piece of furniture there that I'm going to look at on Facebook Marketplace, so hopefully that one works out. So the couch will stay, the chairs will stay, the buffet will stay, and the coffee table will not be staying because of its modern style, so it is going bye-bye, and I've actually already got our new coffee table. So if you saw my flip video where I flipped the coffee table, you'll have already seen what that looks like, but I love the way it turned out. It's gonna fit so well in with the vibe that I'm hoping to get in this space. So as always, once I've got all the furniture moved out of the room, I start prepping the room for paint. So I'm just filling in any cracks or holes in the walls with this lightweight spackling. Also removing any spider webs in the corners and cleaning off dirty baseboards so that everything is nice and clean for paint. And I have this swatch up here on the wall. This is Ethereal Mood by Sherwin-Williams, which is the same color that I painted in the dining room. And the dining room is right there. So, and excuse all the decor things laying everywhere, but I really feel like because these rooms are so open concept that it only makes sense to paint the living room the same color. I really thought about doing something differently, but it just feels right to bring that color in here. So at least for now, that's what we're gonna do. I was a little apprehensive about painting again because when I painted the dining room a couple of months ago, I did so during the week while Dalton was at work and it took me 3 days. So this time I knew I wanted to paint on a weekend when he could help the whole time, and we got this done in just 1 day, which I was so happy about. This is the room all complete, and it feels much more cohesive with the dining room now. Hello you guys, it has been a couple of days since you last saw me and my husband painting in here, and I'm happy to say we got both coats done on Saturday, and that was a really exhausting day of painting because we had so much of this crown molding and this chair rail to hand paint, and we had to do 2 coats and cutting in. Y'all know, you've probably painted before. It's kind of labor intensive. I really needed a break to reset my creativity before I could really think about this trim design. There are so many options for the layout of trim that you can do on your walls, and so I was kind of getting a little overwhelmed with which layout I wanted. This huge wall where the couch is going to be, that's kind of the focal point, and I could see so many different options for layouts. So you'll see on my mock-up, I have one that is a larger box in the center with 2 smaller boxes on the sides. And I thought that's what I wanted to go with. But because my wall is so long, the middle box looked really strangely long and narrow. I thought it would probably cause me difficulties in the future when I'm trying to put art on the walls, because it might just kind of have too much weird floating free space on either side of the art piece that I put there because the box was so long. So then I thought, well, maybe I'll make the middle box smaller by putting 2 skinny boxes in between. But then I just didn't feel like there was really a purpose for that. I'm not gonna put sconces in here, and sconces would really be the only thing that could go in those skinny boxes that I could think of. And so then I thought, okay, well, why don't I just do all 3 boxes the same size? And I thought this wall was gonna be too big for that, but then I put tape up on the walls, and I'll show you that. So I put tape here on the walls to mock up what 3 equal-sized boxes would look like, and I really like this. And ignore the tape being way up here because that's not where I'm going to put it. But this big wall will have the gallery wall on it, and I just want one big rectangle of trim here so that the whole inside is kind of free space for me to play around in over the years, whether I have a gallery wall or want to hang up a TV there one day with a gallery wall around it. I will have the space that I need to do that. And then on the bottom, we're gonna do 3 smaller boxes. So we ended up needing to buy like 28 pieces of 8-foot trim. So I went ahead and did a Lowe's order for that so that I didn't have to try to find 28 pieces of the exact same trim. So I just put in an order, and I'm gonna go pick that up. And in case you guys ever want to do a project like this, I definitely recommend you drawing it out on a piece of paper like this. This really helped me wrap my brain around it. And we just went around the room measuring walls and writing down the measurements and figuring the math out. And it was actually way easier than it seems. And we did all the measurements and were able to add it up and get the total amount of trim that we will need for each wall. I've been seeing lots of people use these miter shears for their trim projects, so I decided to grab a pair from Amazon and try them out myself, but unfortunately our trim was too big for them since we have 1.5 inch wood trim, but it just would not close all the way around this trim, and therefore we could not get it to cut anything at all. So we decided to go with the old-fashioned miter box, which worked perfectly. Since we had pre-measured and drawn out a diagram of each box, it was very easy to know what length we needed to cut each piece.
Hi, precious girl. Hi, sweetness. You're gonna be in the video, and everybody loves you. You're the main star. Everybody loves a Hazel.
This first wall went up so beautifully, but little did we know that that was the only wall that would be stress-free. Of course, no house is completely level, so we ended up having to adjust our measurements slightly on pretty much every piece of trim because the existing chair rail wasn't level around the room, and neither was the crown molding or the door frames. So we started out by making the boxes level, but then when we stood back, they looked crooked because compared to the unlevel walls, it was not parallel with the trim. Luckily, since each piece is only put on with a few nails into the sheetrock, it is pretty easy to take off a piece if you need to redo it, like we had to do a few times. So we had to not always rely on the level, but make sure that it looked level to the eye instead. We used this 1x4 piece of wood, which is actually about 3.5 inches wide, as a spacer block so that we had an even spacing between every box. This was an absolutely essential part of this process because it made the spacing so easy to do. And when we couldn't make a box completely level, we used the spacer block to make sure that all of the lines were at least parallel to each other. A nail gun works great for this project and really helps things go much faster. We're using a 16 gauge, but an 18 gauge would be a little bit better, I think, because the nails would be slightly smaller, so you wouldn't have as big of holes to fill. To give the trim a professional finished look, I picked up some acrylic caulk. You don't want to get a pure silicone caulk for this because they are not paintable. I also used some spackle to fill in all the nail holes and then sanded them smooth. I cut the nozzle at an angle and kept the hole as small as possible. I made sure to get the bead of caulk very, very small so I didn't have a lot of excess to wipe off. And I did try a tool for smoothing it out, but it turns out that the easiest thing was just wearing a latex glove and using my finger and dipping it in water. There were moments that I never thought I'd say, we finished the trim, but we finished the trim. Honestly, it was such a journey of learning a new skill, and as an adult, learning a new skill is challenging. I'll be honest, there were moments that I was like, okay, I think I just like it better without trim. You know, it's not too bad without trim. We'll just not do the trim because this is too much. It looks fine. It looks fine without it, right? I love just a plain wall. I love a plain wall. But I'm so happy that we persevered and got it done because it makes an incredible difference to how fancy our house feels. It adds just something special in here that was lacking before. So I have absolutely no regrets. I'm so glad it's done though, because it took forever. So I want to share my thoughts with you on just my overall finishing thoughts on this trim and whether or not I recommend doing this. So first I want to share that it took us like 5 times as long as we thought it would. Honestly, I was really ambitious in thinking we would get this room painted and the trim put up within 1 weekend. And it absolutely did not only take a weekend. It ended up taking, I think, 2 weeks total, but we weren't working on it consistently all day throughout those 2 weeks. Overall, I think it took us about 20 hours to do just the trim, and then about 20 more hours, maybe I'm exaggerating, it felt like 20 hours to do the finishing work, like the spackling, sanding, caulk, and repainting all of those areas. But I would say maybe 30 to 35 hours would be a good guess. It felt like pretty much every step of the process was time consuming and tedious. So while the trim was all just like cutting 45-degree angles over and over again, almost custom measuring each box of trim just took a long time to figure out, which is why another tip I have is to have a second person. Not only is it helpful when you're hanging up the pieces to have 2 people, one person like hand the other person things or make sure that it's level, holding a level up, but also just to have the mental support to problem solve all the measurements. It was really helpful for me to have Dalton here with me. I would say that cost-wise, it is such a low amount to pay for something that makes this big of a difference in a room, and I think it will add value to this house. If you're wondering about cost, we originally bought about $250 worth of trim. This trim was $8.58 per 8-foot piece. And we ended up having to buy like 4 more pieces. So it was a little less than $300 worth of trim, plus about $50 worth of paint. And then the other supplies like the caulk, which was like $3, the nails, which were like $10, miter box was $20, we didn't have that already. The spackle I already had, but I think that one's about $5. So just little costs like that, but overall for less than about $400 total, This room got a huge glow up, and $400 is honestly so cheap compared to lots of other home projects and renovations. So I'm so happy with the low cost of this for the difference that it made. So there are so many ways you can do this process. And I think that next time I do this project, I will change the way that I do it. I think that painting the room first and then painting the trim off the wall and then putting the trim on the wall cost me time. I thought it was saving me time to be able to roll all the walls, but I think it cost me more time in the long run because I had to go back in and sand and paint all around very tediously all of the framing with a tiny little sponge brush because I didn't want you to be able to tell that I touched up those areas. And so I basically hand painted all of the trim anyways. So next time, and what I would probably recommend for you guys if you wanted to try this project, is to hang the trim up unfinished, fill your nail holes, caulk the edges, and then paint everything all at once. Then you're done. You don't have to keep getting out the paint can and keep dirtying up brushes and stuff. I think that would be a better way. And my final thought is to definitely do this to your own home. If you're on the fence about it, if you've been looking at pictures on Pinterest, do it. Despite the time that it took and the brain power and the physical power that it took, I would totally do this again. I'm glad I don't have to do it in here again. At least it's just like a one time and you're done with this room. But I would do it in other rooms around my house because of the difference that it made. It looks just as good in person as it does in all those pictures, and it truly makes the room feel huge. But the molding just adds something special and it makes the room feel large, it makes it feel elevated, and it makes it feel expensive, which I think we kind of all want when we're making upgrades to our homes. We want it to add value. So don't be discouraged. Give yourself enough time to work through the measurements and be patient. Have a second person and do the trim and you will love it. Make sure you're subscribed because the full living room makeover video is coming soon and you don't want to miss all the fun decorating and DIYing that's happening in that video. Also, if you remember the antique furniture that I mentioned earlier in the video, I did actually get it and it's so nice. So make sure you watch the full makeover reveal video so you can see that piece of furniture and how I fix it up. And I hope you got some inspiration from this video and had fun watching, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.